Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to discuss, so let's jump right into it. Today, we're going to ask the question, does President Biden's age matter to the next generation of young voters? We'll talk to you about what's at stake as the president seeks the support of young people for his re-election bid. Also, let's talk a little bit about how one black fraternity has decided to move their convention from Florida, citing the fact that there's a continued assault on our communities down in Florida. Should other black organizations follow? We'll have that conversation. And then later, we check in with our sister and our doctor, Dr. Bridget Williams, to talk about her latest book, Courage in Cannabis, Volume 2, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness. So folks, we got a lot to talk about. Join us in the chat as we're streaming live on YouTube under Roland Martin, and be prepared for these great conversations we got for you right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Man, oh man, happy Monday, folks. Let's jump right into the discussion as there is a lot to talk about. First and foremost, there's a big question about whether President Biden is going to have his message resonate with the next generation of young voters. And I wanted to have this conversation with you, Culture Crew, as we talk about what's at stake for the president as he's seeking re-election for 2024. I want you to join us in this conversation right now as we're streaming live on a number of platforms. You can definitely check us out at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. Also, we're streaming live on Amazon News on any of your Roku devices, where we're streaming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All you got to do is tell Alexa, hey, Alexa, play news from Black Star Network, and boom, bada bing. This guy shows up on your screen, along with some of the other dope shows that we got on the network. And of course, make sure you tune in as we are on social media platforms, Facebook, and we're also on YouTube. Just take a look under Roland Martin's YouTube page as we're streaming live there. And we would love to hear from you, because you can be a part of our Culture Crew for the day. And there are already people who are checking in this afternoon. Big shout out to my crew right now who's checking in. There we go. Deidre, I see you. Cindy, I got you. Tiana, good to connect with you again. So many of you are already checking in. And I'm really, really excited to hear what you got to say about today's conversations. All right, folks, let's jump right into it as we talk about President Biden. Does he have what it takes to resonate with the next generation of young voters? This is going to be a continued conversation about the president, especially given the fact that there is so much at stake, and for the next generation to come on out to the polls. Now, there's always an effort to get young people to the polls. The president has done some things as much as he can to try to work for the certain interests of the next generation. Some of the big topics include climate control, dealing with the school student debt loan, they're dealing with the affirmative action piece. So there are a number of topics, but this is an ongoing concern that the Biden administration, and more importantly, his 2024 campaign team, is trying to figure out, does this president's age matter for the next generation of young voters? And when he completes his second term, folks, President Biden is going to be at the healthy age of 86 years old. Can you get that? Can you believe that? Well, let me share with you what one of the reports about this issue coming from the Griot had to say about this. And then, Crew, I would love to get your take, as we are almost there. I mean, it doesn't feel like election season, but we're closely getting there. I think that once the fall of this year kicks in, that's when we're going to start to see some more momentum around this. But here's what the president is. Here's the situation facing the president. This is coming from the Griots, where they say young voters were a key piece of Biden's winning 2020 coalition, which included majorities of young people, as well as college graduates, women, urban and suburban voters, and Black Americans. Maintaining their support will be critical in closely contested states such as Nevada, where even small declines could prove consequential to President Biden's reelection bid. His 2024 campaign plans to emphasize messages that could especially resonate with young people in the coming weeks as the anniversary of the sweeping Inflation Reduction Act approaches in mid-August. That legislation includes provisions that the White House will embrace to argue that Biden has done more than any other president to combat climate change. So, Kuri, I want to get your take on this. Do you think Biden's age matter to the next generation? If you got some young people in your home, you got some young people in your family, those who are eligible and are able to vote, is this a concern? I want you to join me in a conversation as we have this discussion and let me know your thoughts on this. Does this look like this might be a major, major concern for the president? Lana, let me check in with my sister Lana. Lana always coming through with the fire and the heat. You said, look, these young folks looking at him like he their granddad. They don't listen to him today. He can go. Trash can emoji. Ooh, Lana, you kicking it off real strong today. Okay. Wow. That is a real problem. You also said, Lana, you said I would not tell anyone to vote for him. As a matter of fact, Black colleges are gearing up for reparations candidate. That is it. It might be different. Ilana, in as much as there has been some pushback by some folks within the Biden administration or some sense of denial about the reparations piece, we might actually see President Biden really having to address the reparations conversation, during this campaign season. But guess what? Here's my take on that, Lana, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this. If the next generation of Black young voters see that that is an important issue, it may be inserted into the conversation much sooner and much more on a grand scale. That's the question. That's the question. Like I mentioned, they talked about climate change. They talked about affirmative action, dealing with college entry. You're talking about even some elements of the economy discussion. But do you think that if Black youth, young Black voters would really push the reparation conversation, do you think that would make a difference in getting that conversation moving forward? Folks, I want you to join us in the conversation right now. Something to think about. Definitely something to think about. All right, Tiana, thank you, Lana, my sister. You already good. And I'm happy that you're with us this afternoon. All right, Tiana, you said Biden got a tough road ahead with young people, especially with the student loan issue. Yeah. I would agree. I would definitely agree. I think that the president right now understands that this is the big piece, which is why he had that kind of like secondary program after the Supreme Court said that the student loan situation was not deemed to be constitutional. That his efforts in trying to get something moving is still something. But I definitely think he's got a long road ahead. The president is going to have to do his job. And this can't just be optics, right? This has to be substantiated through policies, through some new policy that's going to propel the president above the fray of other folks. Because there are going to be some folks running against the president. I'm talking about from the Democratic Party who definitely will be younger. So that's one thing that the president is going to have to really deal with. That even though he's at this age, Tiana, and I think you would agree with me when I say this, that he's still going to have to appeal by doing things for the interests of the next generation. Like the age thing may not be a major issue, major barrier for a lot of people, for a lot of young people, if the president did certain things. Now, for Black youth, I want us to think about this very quickly, folks, as we take a few minutes here and we'll try our first break. What are the key interests of Black youth right now? Somebody, y'all crew, talk to me on this. What are the key interests? Now, I like to think that it's probably the student loan crisis, like Tiana mentioned. I'm thinking the police brutality piece. The George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, right? I would think that'd be a big thing, especially for young Black men, right? So I don't know if climate change is a priority for young people, for young Black folks. But I would want to know, what do you think are the top priorities for Black youth, young Black voters, and what their demands are for this administration and their president? Share your thoughts on this, folks, and I would love to hear from you. All right, Amber Johnson Logan. Amber, good to hear from you. Welcome to the chat. You said the young people I'm working with care much more about track records and plans. Everyone is old to them, right? So it's more sounds like history and experience. Track records and plans, everyone is old to them. Okay. Because here's the thing, and I'm glad you brought this up, Amber. The fact that I don't know if there's going to be, and I'm saying on the Democratic side and the independent space, even we got Dr. Cornel West, who is brilliant. We all know he's brilliant, right? But he is going to have to figure out how to appeal to a 21-year-old, to a 19-year-old, right? He's going to have to appeal to them, right? Like he's going to have to do something. Now, of course, he has a little bit more progress that can be made in the space of making sure that young people hear him out. He's a professor. He understands the language in a lot of ways. He's in hip hop spaces. You know, if you got older hip hop heads who are behind Cornel West, it's a little bit easier, right? But still, some young black voter is going to be like, I don't know nothing about Cornel West. What has he done? Going back to Amber, your point. What has he done? What is his track record and experience? So I think that's a good point. Thank you, Amber. Let me see. Robin, you said, my sister Robin Wells checked in. You said, I think if we give Biden 4 more years, Blacks are going to get whatever we want. Biden said that he isn't done helping Black people. Okay. I hear you. But now, again, going back to the original question of considering his age, what do young Black voters want from Biden? Look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue this part of the discussion because so many of you are checking in from the chat. Make sure you are, and if you're just tuning in, we're streaming live on YouTube. Look under Roland Martin's page. Join us in the chat on YouTube. Join us in the chat on Facebook, and make sure you stay streaming to us on Black Star Network and Amazon News. Folks, we got a lot more to talk about on the other sides. We just getting started, so stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now
We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. I want to still continue on this conversation that we had about President Biden and his ability to appeal to the next generation of young voters. Does his age matter? And some folks have already said that, yeah, I mean, Lana, you said that to young people, to the next generation of young voters, everyone is old to them. And I think that's a great point. Amber has checked in when she's mentioned this, that young people care more about track record and plans. Everyone is old to them. That seems to be the common theme, right? But what it's going to take for young Black people to get to the polls? Because we having this conversation, and as much as we have this discussion here on the show, among our chat, even during Roland's show, we got to vote, 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 vote. You got to don't forget now, young people play a huge critical role. I mean, yes, they're not going to always vote completely Democratic. They're not going to vote completely Republican. You're going to find some of them in the middle. Some young people are independent. And guess what? Here's the other thing. Can we keep it real? I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. A lot of the older Black folks don't have faith in younger Black folks to be able to make good political decisions. Can I say that again, y'all? A lot of us don't have faith that the next generation can make good political decisions. Because we're looking at the way young people are now. But how many of us are ready to put our future in their hands right now? I'm just throwing something out there. This ain't just about age of President Biden. This is the difference of values. This is the difference of the times that we're living in. This is the difference of issues that we talk about that we deem are important as older Black folks versus those who are coming who are 20, 30, 40 years behind us, and what they are important. And how many of us, when we have the conversation about voting, do we really think about what's the next generation thinking? How do I engage the next generation? How do I bring them in closer? How do I make sure that they are politically involved? How do I make sure that they are politically aware so that way they can make sound political decisions when they go into the ballot box? All right, talk to me, y'all. Nope, let's just talk about it. Let's go back to what some of you are saying. Jason Belton. Jason, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the chat. You said, get the energy prices down, put the economy back together, and quit sending all of our money overseas and address this crime waves and close the border, and then we can talk re-election. Jeez, talking about a shopping list. I hear you, Jason. I don't know if that's all going to happen before his reelection bid. So I don't know if this is a wish list or you really think that the president should move like this. It would be awesome if we could get the energy prices down. It would be awesome if we stop sending trillions and trillions of dollars and other resources to other countries. It would be awesome if we can address the crime wave. That would be amazing. And certainly we could talk about the border situation before we go into the reelection campaign. But Jason, you know it and I know it. That's not possible. We might be able to, out of the 4 or 5 things that you pointed out, we might be able to talk about maybe one, get 1 or 2 things, possibly. But the reelection campaign has actually already started, Jason, because that's the cycle of our system here. But that's the cycle. It's already started. Let me see something here. Cindy D, my sister, you checked and you said the kitchen table issues in the Black community will make the difference. Are the kitchen table issues of the Black community in alignment with the next generation issues of Black people? Are those the same thing? Are they one and the same, or are they two different things? That's what I think that's going to happen. That we need to make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to the quote unquote kitchen table issues. I appreciate you, Cindy, for bringing that up. You don't like my music. You say young people want real freedom, and that's good. But here's something that I think that we need to make sure that we don't fall in the trap of. When we want things and then we don't have no idea, or the goal is so broad that it can be attained through a lot of different strategies. What does that mean? What does real freedom mean? Are you talking about economic freedom? Are you talking about political freedom? What are you talking about? Are you talking about freedom where young Black people are exposed to knowledge of themselves through history and other means, right? Like, what are we saying when we say we want real freedom? You don't like my music? I appreciate you for posting that. Thank you so much. Robin, you said the youth are the most important because they are the future. We owe the youth. We need to hear their voices. How do we hear the voices? I'm in agreement with you. When I was in Baltimore, folks, I would organize. Of course, it wasn't me by myself. I had a team of young leaders, but we would organize political, what do they call them? Debates, candidates forums. So, every so many years when there was those consequential elections, young leaders, myself and others, we would organize these candidates forums, bring the candidates there, and all they can talk about is what plans they have for 18 to 30-year-olds. What's the plan for the next generation? That's all that was the parameter of the candidates forum. We're talking about quote unquote youth issues, young people issues, next generation issues, young professional issues. I don't know if those things are happening in cities across the country, because that is a high form of engagement. Getting young people to be a part of any type of community effort where they take the lead. That's the type of engagement we're talking about. And so I'm in total agreement with you there, Robin. Amber, going back to your point, Amber Johnson Logan, you said we have allowed systemic disinvestment in K through 12, civic literacy in public schools, which educate most of our children. Our organizations, churches, groups, etc., are weak. Sports training is strong. So many of us, great point, Amber, so many of us are so concerned about the sports side of things. And we don't expose our children to the political side of things until we are like, they get in their teenage years. By that time, folks, here's the thing. Because I've worked with young leaders from across this country in my 25 years of community service. If you start to plant the seed early for young people to get involved, whether you're talking about going to a march, whether you're talking about some community service, going to feed somebody, going to do a clothing drive, right? Whether you're talking about even some civic engagement in the church, the mosque, whatever your faith institution is, but you start planting the seed that they are not in this thing by themselves, that they have a duty and responsibility to their neighbor, to their community to serve. That can be planted very early on. Some of us tend to think like that stuff can wait. I want them to focus on school. Look, let's be real. Let's be real. That type of education is not taught in schools. So we're talking about, and I think, Amber, you bring up an excellent point, that civic learning, that civic literacy, that social justice introduction. Where do young people go? How do they learn? And how do they start to shape and form their personal politics? Because your children, they take on the politics that you have. That's all proven. That's in research. If you think about yourself, your view of the world is heavily influenced by the household that you grow up in until you're exposed to something different. So we got to give children an opportunity to learn. And I think this is the critical part of this whole process. If children don't have a personal politics, we wait till the high school years By the time they get into the high school years, they should be already involved in their community. They shouldn't be just getting involved. They should be already involved in their community. They should understand at least the branches of government. And I know this taught in school, but I'm talking about having a real understanding. How many of the children that are in our families know where their local city hall is, right? Where is City Hall? Who is the, I mean, this is basic stuff, right? The stuff that we tend to believe, oh, children should naturally know, but they don't. Trust and believe me, folks, they don't. They really don't. And I'm talking about Black youth. If you ask Black youth today, well, who's the mayor of your city? Who's the council person of your city, of your district? Who is the congressperson of your district? Can they name it? And we just start to slowly teach them about that level of civic, political, and community engagement. All right, there we go. There we go. All right, let's talk about this. You don't like my music. You checked in and said, ask a prisoner what freedom means. No, I'm asking you. What do you mean? Are you a prisoner? You're not in prison now. What does that mean? Ask a prisoner for freedom. Yes, that means getting out of prison. But ask a person who's already out of prison what freedom means. That's a different conversation. Come on, bro. Come on now. Ask a prisoner what freedom means? No, I'm asking you, what does that mean? What does real freedom, you put real freedom, what does real freedom mean? Look, I got to take another pause. When we come back, more conversation. Stay with us, folks. The conversation is getting hot right here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been having a very robust conversation about President Biden, his age, and does that matter for the next generation of young voters. And I'm putting it in the context of not just young voters in general, but for Black youth, for young Black voters, looking at President Biden, how he has been moving, the issues he's been addressing, especially as it relates to the Black community. And more importantly, how that's going to resonate. Will that resonate with the next generation of young Black voters? And so we're talking about political engagement. What do we do to make sure that young Black voters, young Black people who are eligible to vote, are politically engaged, politically informed, that they know exactly what to do or how to move and how to strategize of how to get the most out of this situation of possibly reelecting this president. All right, I'm gonna go back to what so many of you are talking about. And folks, you can join us in the conversation as the Culture Crew is gathered on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page. We would love to hear from you. Go to your YouTube page under Roland Martin, go to our Facebook page under Roland Martin, and make sure, of course, you stay tuned to us on blackstarnetwork.com and Blackstar on Amazon News. Okay, let me pull up some other thoughts from you, crew. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you checked in. Good to hear from you, bro. You said if the question is Biden's age an issue with young voters, then the answer is hell yes. Like every generation, there's always a call for new thinking from previous. This one is no different. Absolutely. Absolutely. The new thinking. I love how you put that, Real Brooklyn. What is the new thinking? What is the new thinking? And I think that's the question that we should pose to us as the people, right? And not just pose that to the next generation of young voters, but for us, what is the new thinking? What new thinking that we would like to have? And I mean, and now we don't have to answer this right now, but we have to be clear. And I'm talking about we as the adults in the community, we have to be clear about which way we want to see our people in our community go. And then we can start to help young people understand it. Like we understand how this system works. So many of you have already been checking in and saying, y'all know how the system works, but does the next generation understand how the system works? And I think that's one of the big pieces of this. Because people always say, well, why isn't the president doing things? Why isn't the president doing this? Why isn't the president doing that? But how many of us actually know what the president does, what he's responsible for, what he can do, what he cannot do, and how much of the work falls on Congress? That's that level, right? And more importantly, looking at it and understanding it. All right, let me go back to Real Brooklyn. I appreciate you for posting that. Thank you, bro. Khadijah, you checked in and said, I agree. The young are no longer taught in 1970 school. Politics were taught and play a role against each. Democrats and Republicans on different sides of the classroom, serious arguments / negotiations. Absolutely. Absolutely. And in teaching that, we have to make sure that we teach that. Like, if you are a Democrat voter, right? Well, you should still know the Republican talking points against the ideas that you have or the agenda that you hold, because you got to teach young people about how to counter argue against people who don't think the same way, who don't believe the same thing. That's the other part about political engagement. So I'm right there with you, Khadijah, when you're making that point, that there needs to be an element of that. There needs to be a counter argument. Great point. Great point. Let's talk about what else we got here. I'm seeing you don't like music. You say if you raise a child from birth with bound limbs, they will not only grow to accept their binds. Okay, they will attribute their freedom to their disability. Okay, so a lot of us are still talking about what does freedom mean? What does freedom mean? Well, is freedom the same thing? Is political freedom? Is that what we're talking about here? Because look, I'm convinced, man, like at the end of the day, folks, at the end of the day, we got real issues. We got to deal with real stuff, right? We got a lot of challenges facing our community. What do we give the next generation? What do we give young Black voters? What do we arm them with? Y'all see what I'm saying? That's the point I'm making. What do we arm them with to combat all of this madness that we're seeing right now? What do we arm them with? How do we make sure? Like, what do you tell the young people in your family who are 19, 20, 21, those who are eligible to vote, what do you tell them? How do you encourage them? It'd be interesting. I wish, I know that we're doing this virtually, so it would be super, super interesting to see if we were in an auditorium, how many of us are actually having conversations with the young people in our family, whether it's children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, young people in the community. How many of us actually are having conversations about politics, what's going on socially? It would be very, very, very interesting to see. All right. Raise consciousness. You said Biden's age is not the issue, it's his senility. Duh. People have said that it's about him being quote unquote senile, right? But is that the problem? We saw Mitch McConnell. Did y'all hear about this? Mitch McConnell froze during the middle of a press conference, right? Like Mitch McConnell standing there and talking, and all of a sudden, he just freezes. Can't complete a thought, can't finish a sentence. He just checks out for a few moments, right? So bad, he had to be walked off. Do you know they told this, and they asked this man, Mr. McConnell, do you think that you are healthy enough? This is a real concern. This is a major scare. Do you think that you are healthy enough to complete the term in Kentucky, to do your job until 2024? This man said, yes, I am. See, we're talking about just not the senility, but we're also talking about gatekeepers. And this is the challenge that we got to figure out. And I'm saying, even in the Black community, this happens, right? There are individuals who want to hold on to power. And as much as we talk about the education side, as much as we talk about the engagement side, the role that we can play, I think, in this whole conversation is creating a pathway for young people to get to places of power and influence much easier than what we had to go through. Because if we hold on to this view that, oh, young people got to get through the red tape, they got to go through the same thing I go through, then what's the point? I don't want my son and my daughter, and I wouldn't want your son and your daughter to go through the same exact stuff that we went through to prove a point, to help build their character. They're going to have more than enough stuff to deal with on the other side. So why shouldn't we create a pathway? See, this is that part. I'm tired of Black folks, Black leadership, political leadership, older leadership. Everybody want to hold the reins of power until they die. You no good to us. Why not pass the torch early? Then for your final years, you teaching and training and providing guidance and wisdom. And then you die, because when you die, when that time comes, you have an army that you have built. But some of us, we take that thing to the grave, and there's no army in existence. And we got to start the cycle over again, start the process over again. Okay. Let me go back to you. Let me hear what y'all got to say on this piece, folks. And I'm appreciating so many of you who are checking in. Real Brooklyn, you said, I can honestly say that I have no confidence in our nation. Wow. You said that in our nation getting right, or the world for that matter, we are in trouble. And it will take greatness from everyone and not just one to make it right. Woo! That might be the quote of the day, Real Brooklyn. That might be the quote of the day, brother. Absolutely. It's going to take all of us at this point. Older folks, younger folks, Black folks, white folks, poor people, wealthy people. It's going to take, if we're serious about making this country right, if we're serious. Now, if we're not serious, let's continue to talk in circles. Let's continue to keep any avenue of new thinking blocked. Let's continue to just complain and not do. That's if we're not serious. But if we're serious, we got to do some things to change the culture of power, of how we relate to power, how we generate power, how we gain power. If we're serious. All right. Let me see who else we got here. If I want to get another voice before we take our next pause, folks. Many of you just checked in. And Pauline, you said you think that Mitch McConnell had a mini stroke. I'm sure. But the fact that he still wants to hold on to power to 2024, come on, sir. Come on, sir. The crazy part is that people of Kentucky, you're doing a disservice to the people of Kentucky when you hold on to like that. That's the other part about that. When you hold on to power like that, you do a disservice to your constituents because no, I mean you out here, you're not healthy. You're not able to take on the burden of public service, but you want to still do your thing. Mm. Pretty Brown Meaning 726. I love this as we close out on this part of the discussion. You say, we arm our children with the truth. Knowledge is power, and power is freedom. That's right. We don't wait till somebody else gives us the knowledge or the power. We do it ourselves, folks. And I think that is the big part of this. If we want to, does Biden age matter? It may matter. I think it will. But if he wants this thing to resonate with the next generation, then he's going to have to do some things differently. He's going to have to speak the truth. He talked about this in his remarks around the whole situation down in Florida, right? You got to tell the truth. This is the way, look, this is the antidote to America's problems. America has to face the truth about herself. She has to teach the truth about her history. She has to give the people the truth to heal the wounds that were made by all of the lies. Not just lies about Black history, but just the lies, the constant lying that's happened in America that causes so many of us to lose a sense of the reality. We've been lied to so much. We don't trust each other. We don't believe each other. We don't want to be around each other. And we don't know who is who and what is what anymore because of the lying. And if you want young people to get involved in that, then you are absolutely right, Mimi. Empower them, arm them, the next generation with the truth. Tell them to stand on the truth, regardless to whom or what. Tell them to stand on the truth, whether they're running for office or they're running a nonprofit organization. The truth will set us free. All right, folks, I got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's check in with our doctor, Dr. Bridget, MD. She's going to talk to us about her second volume of her book, Courage in Cannabis. We got some great special guests that's going to be lined up. That's going to be a part of the conversation. But guess what? No conversation is complete without you, my crew. So stay tuned. That discussion is up next here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, I have to say this. I am truly, truly grateful to so many of you, my crew members, for joining us for the first part of that conversation. We will certainly make sure we get to our due diligence around the story around the Alphas and how they have decided to move their convention out of Florida. We will certainly talk about that. Maybe I'll throw that on the agenda for tomorrow, but I think we needed to have at least some more discussion about young people and the president's relationship and his viability to be the candidate for the next generation. Very important conversation. So if you didn't get a chance to tune in, make sure you tune in. Many of you have brought up some excellent points, and I want to make sure we get those points out to as many people as possible. So definitely check into the first hour of the show. All right, folks, let's shift gears to talk about health and wellness as we always do. Today is Monday. We've got our sister, our local and resident, I don't want to say local because she's national, she's worldwide, Joe. Our resident physician, Dr. Bridget, and she's going to check in as we talk about this week's Reclaim Your Wellness. Dr. Bridget, MD, is in the house. First thing, Doc, don't come up here looking crazy like you mad at me for something.
No, I haven't. I felt like I haven't connected. Like I'm trying to pick up on what's going on. So
you have. Oh well, we're just talking about politics, young people and voting. That's all.
Always. It's always good to see you. And
you too.
Today is a huge day. And
I wonder why, Doc. Why?
I don't know.
No. Wait a minute. Let's see. Okay. Carrots and cannabis. You got your second volume of your book, Carrots and Cannabis, that is out, and you want us to really hear and know some new things. What's the first and foremost? I know you got some special guests lined up for today, so I'm really excited about that. But what's the big difference between volume 1 and volume 2 for you, and to get folks, excited about what you're bringing now?
First of all, I wanted to make sure that we were hitting stories that we didn't get in the first book. We have a educational section, which is a little bit more of an op-ed that some of our authors put their information in that area. We also have this thing called Sparks, because we have full chapters, but I've been traveling the country for the last 2 years, really meeting these amazing people that have done work that and sacrificed, and just for a plant, for something they believe they have the right to have. And I wanted to be able to acknowledge them. So our Sparks offer more testimony, more shorter stories, and quotes. And so those people are, some of the people you're going to meet today. Some of the people are actually also from book 1, but we have voices from Mike Tyson to Jane West to Ed Rosenthal, who's like the guru of growing. We also have Johnny Curry, who's a notorious legacy market of the 1980s, and how he went from the legacy market to now having a legal brand in Detroit, and happens to be my cousin on top of it. So always got to do a little bit of that, right? And so really, I knew the first time I was ignorance is bliss. I knew what I wanted to happen, and I knew that I wanted to create a community, not just have people submit stories to me. But the second time around, we were #1 bestseller with the first book. And so with coming around the second time, I pushed for more in-depth stories, and knowing that it had been in the hands of legislators and churchgoers and naysayers and celebrities and all of the above with the first book, I knew that we needed to push even harder with this one. So this one is more focused on the personal stories, personal experience, which what the difference is.
Okay.
The first book, Cannabis, was the main character. The second book, the people are the main character and cannabis is the supporting actor. And
I like how you did that. I like how you did that, Doc. I see your vision. I see your vision. Okay.
So we have really distinctive voices and personalities, and I told the authors, if you aren't getting emotional, if you're not feeling this when you're writing it, then you need to start over, because we wanted people to really understand why people change their lives around this, why it has opened up doors and closed some because of this. And so they had to be willing to be vulnerable. And we created really meaningful, beautiful stories around it.
All right, I like this. All right, no more talking about how your process, because your process is dope. You know what I'm saying? I know you got a dope process, but you do have some great voices that are a part of this book. So let's I would love to bring those voices on, because I'm interested in hearing these folks' stories.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know if you're doing all or
let's start with you have our first guest, Bridget.
Yes. So Bridget Randall, who I don't even know how long we've known each other, but he's family too. So
how we doing?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Hey, brother Bridget, peace and blessings. How you feeling, bro?
Peace and blessings. I'm feeling well. How about yourself?
I'm good. All right, who else we got? I see we got our sister down there as well. Who's our sister here?
We have the notorious Miss Candace Ramirez, who that's again someone that I met in my travels, and she's a powerhouse. I'll say that she's a powerhouse. She has an amazing personal story, but has led to you're in LA.
I am just outside of LA. Yes.
So she's, and that's a whole nother, when you go around the pockets around this country, she represents and has created a voice for us in California and in the LA area that's significant, and even around children. So yeah.
All right, so let's do this. I want to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's kick it off with Broderick and Miss Candace Ramirez, and then we have our next guest that's going to be brought in. And that way we can have this conversation as folks, Dr. Bridget, MD, our resident physician. She's our resident family physician, but she's also our cannabis expert here on the show. She got a new book out. It's called Courage in Cannabis, Volume 2. I want the chat to be filled with so many questions and thoughts about these conversations about cannabis and its uses. And of course, Black folks, how it affects the Black community. Join us in the chat right now as we're streaming live on YouTube under Roland Martin's page on Facebook. And let's take a quick pause. When we come back, more conversations about courage and cannabis. Stay tuned, folks. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, We're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We are about to get into some great conversation with our resident physician, Dr. Bridget, MD, who always brings us something to think about when it comes to our health and wellness. And for this week's segment, Reclaim Your Wellness, Dr. Bridget wanted to let the world know that her volume 2 of her best-selling book, Courage in Cannabis, is now available. And she got some dynamic voices as to have this conversation right here on the show. And so I'm really, really excited to have my system, roll out her big announcement right here on the Black Star Network. I'm really honored. So I'm gonna let you do what you do as we have this conversation, Dr. Bridget. But this is a big thing to have, as you said so eloquently in the first segment. Cannabis was the main feature in the first book. It's the people and their stories, which is the highlight of the second volume. So I want to start with our brother Broderick, yes, and talk about his story. What's his story?
So absolutely. So Broderick is, an amazing human being that works in the cannabis industry now. But I first met Broderick on a webinar, and he picked up what looked like a softball at the time. And so I was trying to understand what I was looking at, and it was every medical band, ER band, hospital bracelet that he had had since he was a child. He was diagnosed with sickle cell. And when you saw not only how massive this was, but how tightly wound it was, I don't know if anything else drove home what this man, then child, experienced growing up. And in addition to that, his sister, a year younger, also have sickle cell, but they took very different directions when it came to how they were treating it. And so I would like to have him finish that off there.
Well, thank you, Doc. You're a wonderful human as well. And thank you both for this opportunity. And like Ashley mentioned, my sister and I were both born with sickle cell anemia, genetic blood disease. My mother and father both had the trait, so it was passed down to us. And it's a very painful disease that's a lot well known in the brown and black communities. And a lot of the medical community still they either have their certain ways of treating it, and then they some of them don't know all the way how to treat it. So we've my sister and I experienced a lot of traumatic experiences growing up. Definitely as a youth, being hospitalized quite a bit, that took a toll on us. And then as I developed into a younger adult, I was able to discover medical cannabis and realized that it provided a much better quality of life and just better way of wellness. And instead of getting all the high dose medicines and pills and just morphine and Dilaudid through the IVs, I myself was able to find a better wellness path and through cannabis. So for a while, I grew up in a church home or church family, and like my mom, and especially on her side, they were not really too fond of cannabis, especially the way society was taught how negative it was. They thought it could be, try to teach everyone, but for a while I kept it a secret because I would just secretly medicate and find ways to have a better relieve my pain and ailments, and then it just hit me once I started realizing it was coming out in society more, and then I myself just was like, hey, if I'm living better, I want my sister to live better too, because as we got older, her condition, like it kind of, like Dr. B mentioned, it twisted. Like when I was young, I was sick a lot more, and then as we grew older, I found better ways, and then my sister, her condition started to worsen, and so I was like, I'm tired of seeing her so hospitalized too, and I want her to be able to enjoy her adult life. So I, mentioned it to my family, and for a while I was a rebel, but I had to go against a lot of the family to kind of talk to them and show them that, hey, this plant is not the devil's lettuce. You can still get things done. You can still be productive. I still was a college student, was able to graduate, and just able to get a career too. So I was just able to show through actions that this plant is not as terrible as people like to think. So my journey with cannabis continued to get stronger, and my advocacy for it as well. So I decided to continue finding ways to educate myself and inform myself. And then once I felt stronger with that, I began to try to speak up more about it, and not only about cannabis but about sickle cell anemia too, because a lot of awareness needs to be shined in that area as well. A lot of research, funding, just a lot of help for people suffer and deal with that.
And what I found interesting though about your story was really the dichotomy between your path and then as your sister's path. And if you don't know a lot about sickle cell, the one thing that really stands out that people should understand is that your blood cells end up sickling because of some sort of stress, mental, physical, immune, some sort of stress happens in your body. The cells start to sickle, and they're almost like sharp diamond type edges that go through your bloodstream and cause an extreme amount of pain.
Yep.
So not only does cannabis help with the pain, but it helps with the stress that hopefully you won't, whatever that mental, physical, whatever stress that might bring it on, it decreases the stress. So hopefully you never get to the point of sickling, which is what you found to happen.
Correct. And
traditional treatment is opioids, a lot of them. Okay. And that's really where the stories twist. And so,
well, can I ask something? And I'm glad that you explained that, Doc, and even more so, Brother Broderick. Your story is, I mean, I have 1,000 questions. I probably can go on your story, all day. But first and foremost, I want to know, what's the condition for your sister at this point?
She has sickle cell anemia SS as well, and she's still currently battling it daily, and trying to overcome the opioid dependency versus cannabis use. So
she decided to take the opioids. You decided to take the cannabis.
Well, yes and no. Like she like because the medical system is kind of designed that, like Doc mentioned, that's the main treatment. So like after a while, if you yourself kind of don't like snap out of it or realize like, hey, something's gotta give, your body can just be dependent on getting so much of that medicines that it's like, hey, I need it. And now it's become in my opinion, it's become more of a like, hey, we need people, not just my sister, but anyone that becoming dependent on those chemicals need a physician to actually help them wean off. And cannabis is definitely one of those exit drugs, or exit medicines, I shouldn't say drugs, medicines, plant medicines that can help with that. But with our legal system and the government, the way it's set up, that's frowned upon. But and there's different forms of cannabis that people have to realize too. I know that most people may think that, he's talking about smoking, but no, you can ingest cannabis. There's topicals, there's different forms and different ways to try to access whatever pain or condition you're trying to treat.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, like, what has been, very quickly, and I know we got to take another pause, but what has been the biggest benefit for you for being a cannabis user, especially given your condition? Like, how has that affected your body?
Well, it's actually helped me have a way better quality of life to be able to work a full-time job and actually be able to be out here working and even impressing my doctors as to the point where they're like, oh, you don't even look like some of our sickle cell patients, and that sounds weird, but it's just like I've been told a lot of surprising things, and it's like, well, I'm always like, well, how can I help others to look like me, I guess, or feel like me? You guys know I use cannabis. It's in my blood, so I've had to overcome that battle, but I will say it's just helped me provide a better quality of life and less pain crises, less hospital admittings, and just a way more positive outlook on life, honestly.
I appreciate it. Doc, what's your take?
It's one of those things that the story's impressive. Broderick's story, and note, he's in book 1, and his sister's actually in book 2. And there's so many layers to how it reflects in our community and what we deal with. We could talk about sickle cell just in itself, right? But how his family responded, right? That here he is, he's doing better, he's feeling better, and almost ostracizing him for using it, in the very beginning. I think if it wasn't such a huge difference between what his sister was going through and what he was going through, they probably never would have accepted it. But then it became quite obvious that he was going in one direction and she was going in another, right? And then when you look at the fact that we deal with the stigma and the stereotypes of cannabis, but here with sickle cell patients, they're dealing with, there's the stigma of having sickle cell, that you're drug seeking, that you're faking it, that it's not real, and all these things. So you already have that on you. Then when you do go to the hospital, oh, you're a drug addict, but they aren't offering anything much more than that. And then you say you're using he's dealing with so many different layers of the experience of being, Black in America with a chronic disease.
And all that stress.
All of that, right? And then to come back, and he is an incredible example of what medical cannabis is. Because
Doc, I want to, and that's what I wanted to talk about. And I know I want to, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, I want to bring Ms. Kindness Ramirez into this discussion as well, as we have this conversation about, cannabis use. Broderick, like I said, I got 1,000 questions for you, bro, and we just don't have enough time to cover it. But first and foremost, I'm glad that you are in a better place with your condition. Our prayers go out to your sister, for her to get into a better place with her condition as well. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, you're welcome, brother. When we come forward, more conversation about being courageous in cannabis, as we're talking about Dr. Bridget's volume 2, her latest book about the stories of individuals and their experience with cannabis. And folks, you share your thoughts. Share your thoughts as we're streaming right now on YouTube and Facebook. Post your comments and your questions. Let's get into a conversation about cannabis use, medical cannabis, recreational cannabis, but just cannabis use as we talk about this on the other side. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196. Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We have been talking to Dr. Bridget, MD, our resident family physician and cannabis expert, to talk to us about her latest book, Farajii Cannabis Volume 2. It's the new book from Dr. Bridget, where she talks about some of the stories. She shares stories of people who have been positively influenced by medical cannabis, and more importantly, to get more details and more understanding about cannabis and the cannabis culture. And every Monday here on The Culture, we check in with Dr. Bridget for our Reclaim Your Wellness segment. And so Dr. Bridget has brought on some phenomenal voices for this week to give us something to think about as we're talking about how we can be courageous in understanding cannabis. Now, Doc, you have another dynamic voice here along with us. We heard the story of Brother Broderick, but then we got Miss Kindness Ramirez.
Yes. So absolutely fell in love with her when I met her, and she's so dynamic. And, you know, when you're starting out on the West Coast, they've been doing it for a minute longer than we have over here in the
West Side.
So
faux life.
For life. I get you.
I definitely want her story is incredibly compelling. I'll let you start in your journey.
Yes. Same, you know, when I met Dr. B, it was like, how can I be in your world every single day?
She does have that ability. She brings you in. Yeah, she does bring you in. So I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
It's so easy to do. Yeah. My story, you know, I'm a mom. I'm a regular mom and a classroom educator. That's what I was doing back in 2012 when I slipped on a puddle in a grocery store, and I was 26 weeks pregnant at the time. So yeah. So then here comes the healthcare system. Here comes all the things that go with that. Here come the offerings of opioids to a 26-week pregnant woman that clearly say on the label may cause birth defects. And I chose cannabis as an alternative. After a lot of research, after some conversations with my very conservative Black family, after recognizing the risk that could mean for my freedom, my children's access in my home, and all of those things, I chose cannabis and I healed my body. Then the fight
in a nutshell. I like how you put that. In a nutshell. I was pregnant, I fell, I chose cannabis, and I'm alive. Okay, I got you.
But then the fight came. Yes.
I want to say that there's so much more to that, right? Yes. Because what you just said, Black woman pregnant, choosing cannabis for her condition and pain, and ends up healing yourself. But now you've started on a whole nother path. Like there's no going back at this point. So first of all, I do have the question, what did that look like, being pregnant, choosing cannabis for your pain medicine, and what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, it looked like an excruciating amount of pain for several weeks. And then that chronic pain looks like depression. It looks like sadness. It looks like guilt, shame, fear for my unborn child. It looks like hard times in my marriage. It looks like a lot of emotional trauma and stress. And the choice was provoked by all of that and the recognition that opioids could cause much more damage. So I often joke about this and say I did a Google search and Siri told me to try weed, and she meant it. And so I went down that path of research and decided to make my own medicine and take that risk. And then in healing my body, interfaced with the system, because some wonderful healthcare practitioner decided that they were going to check a box and have me drug tested without my consent. And that's when the activist was born, because when I got that call from a licensed social worker asking me not about cannabis consumption or a Schedule I drug in my bloodstream, but about abuse in the home, violence in my marriage, and other situations that I might be dealing with as a result of a positive cannabis test. And there was just something that woke up in me about the realizations of how many other women were dealing with this, not in California, not in progressive states, and not with the amount of privilege that I had to fight it.
So make that connection for me, Kindness, that because you use cannabis, the healthcare industry assumed that there was some deeper issue, not because of the fall that you experienced at 26 weeks pregnant, but they assumed that your character, your lifestyle is to blame for cannabis use in the state of California. I'm in Los Angeles as well, so this is all happening in the state of California. So is that what I'm understanding from you, sis?
100%. I mean, obviously, we're talking about bias here, implicit bias, the choice to test me. At the time, I think I had Medi-Cal, so that's another factor that might, encourage healthcare staff to check that box, obviously being a Black woman. But we're talking about a woman who had another child at the time and a master's degree and a home and things that, I worked very hard for. So there really was no reason to test me. There was no indication that I was doing anything other than what they were telling me, which was bed rest.
So Dr. Bridget, from both of these stories of Broderick and Kindness, like the prescription of opioids, I'm a little bit like, why is opioids the go-to prescription plan versus, whether it's cannabis or some other alternative form of healing? Why is it just that? Especially given the fact that the country is still deeply involved in a quote unquote opioid crisis. Why is that still the go-to?
Well, I think this may surprise people, but for all medications, there is a category listing for pregnancy and for lactation. And that category listing for Tylenol is a category A. That means that it's safe, and we all know that it was safe and what have you. And now there's a big case coming out about that after all of these years. But that's how we would measure if someone could take something. B meant that it was fairly good. C means you would only use it occasionally, only if needed. And then, of course, D and E gets into a place that it could be harmful to the baby and cause issues and what have you. And so I think it might surprise people that for opioids, for the most part, they're talking about category B, maybe C.
Yes.
And so that is where if you have severe pain and you're pregnant, they're actually giving you narcotics. They're giving you, codeine, Tylenol 3, and they're giving you Vicodin and Percocet and what have you.
When these are all things that can cause serious birth defects. As Kindness said, it's stuff that's literally on the bottle that it can cause serious birth defects.
Serious addiction at birth. Okay. And addiction, not just for the mom that can obviously happen, but addiction for that child. And so it's I was always surprised how easily it was provided because, you know, you don't want me to eat a hot dog when I'm pregnant. But
that part.
Take Vicodin? And so I was always a little bit cautious. It's true. I mean, I don't know. If you experience, if you have,
they don't want you to eat a hot dog because of the nitrogen or whatever. They don't want you to eat shellfish because of those risks. But go ahead and take, this Vicodin while your child is developing its lungs.
Yeah, and many other things as well. So she made a choice for something that is not categorized yet. It is still considered Scheduled 1. It was still considered highly addictive and no medical benefit. So by doing that, it puts you in a place where you're positive, and given all the other demographics, now they're accusing you of something. So I've actually done talks for lactation nurses, visiting nurses associations that see families during pregnancy, after pregnancy, and during lactation, to have them look at the situation differently. Because literally you get tested. Sometimes they're taking the child out of the home. I have patients now where the social worker or the nurse reported to a social worker that there was a positive test, or they smelled cannabis in the home, and the newborn's actually taken out.
That's crazy. I know we got another guest, and I got to take another pause. So I'm gonna take this first. This is another pause. But then, and I know Kindness, you want to share some thoughts. Broderick, you want to share some thoughts. But we got to bring in another voice, which is on the legal side.
Yes.
And when we come back, we're going to be checking in with Miss Natasha Andrews, who is an attorney, a cannabis attorney, folks, to talk about these cases. Because once these cases get out of the healthcare space, then they get into the legal space, right? They get into a space where individuals like a Kindness and Broderick, who feel like their civil rights may be violated, their human rights may be violated, and now it's taken into a different space. So folks, we're gonna be checking in with the attorney Natasha Andrews on the other side. Stay with us, continue to join us in the conversation. John D, I'm gonna get you your thoughts and your point, and many of you who are sharing your thoughts as we're streaming live on YouTube right now under Roland Martin's page. Stay with us, folks. More conversation about carriage and cannabis here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. We are in the midst of a very important conversation about being courageous in cannabis. This is based on the new book by our resident family physician and cannabis expert, Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams, MD. Her book, Courage in Cannabis, Volume 2, is officially out, and we're having a conversation with Dr. Bridget along with some of the folks that she highlighted in the books who are giving their stories and about cannabis and so much more. We want you to join us in the conversation as we're streaming live on YouTube, under Roland Martin, and on Facebook. And we would love to hear what you got to say. All right, let's bring you back into the frame here. Doc, you got another guest that I think we definitely should hear from. She serves as an attorney, a cannabis attorney. Talk to us a little bit about the work that you have done with with attorney Natasha Andrews.
So having the variety of voices here is extremely important because I believe that we wanted to create a book that no matter where you were in this space, there was something for you. And so having an attorney that could really share her experiences, understand the point of view for clients. Natasha's background started with immigration law. And so I'll have her share her story and her perspective, but we really wanted to be able to bring in voices that were remarkable, and she's done a lot in this space, so that people had a better understanding of just the massness of this plant and the effect and particularly how it has an effect on us.
Absolutely. Natasha, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. How are you this afternoon, sis?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that introduction, Dr. Bridget.
Absolutely. So, Sister Natasha, talk to us about the work that you do. And after hearing the stories of like Broderick, hear the story of kindness, I'm sure these stories are so similar to the cases that you take on, correct?
Well, I certainly do hear those stories, and I have to say that that's had an effect on my drive and my desire to be in this space. As Dr. Bridget stated, I actually came to this space from immigration law, and so those aren't the types of cases that I saw in the day-to-day, but it should come as no surprise that as I started making people aware that I was in the cannabis space, these types of cases came to my attention. Oftentimes, I will pass them on to my colleagues that have expertise in these, but unfortunately, they are not the types of things that are a surprise at all.
Do you find, Natasha, that these cases involve more Black people or more white people, or what group of the population is challenged with this issue of cannabis on a legal level?
Well, to have statistics tell it, we are the minority, at least as far as this country is concerned. And so it goes without saying that you would expect most cases to involve people who are not Black. However, unfortunately, because of the nature of over-policing that does tend to happen in Black communities, it also comes as no surprise that you would hear a lot of this. I feel that a lot of times we are de facto taken as guilty until proven innocent, which is the exact opposite of what's supposed to happen, right? And so I've had cases where someone was driving through a state where cannabis is not legal, but we all know that hemp is legal all over the country. And because they had hemp in their vehicle, and I don't mean someone who tried to pass cannabis off as hemp, I mean people who have sincerely had hemp or a hemp product in their car, it escalates and becomes a very violent and a very life-threatening situation. Those are definitely the drivers that make me say that. I think someone said it earlier. I view cannabis very much as a civil rights issue. And I know that's a far stretch for some, but without question in my mind, this involves civil rights on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
So Broderick, talk to us. What's your take on that, bro?
I mean, I agree. I just feel like this plant, and from personal experience, my father got in trouble for cannabis, and then you look around in society today, a lot of Black and brown are being kept out of the industry and not having chances to be owners, or or kept at the bottom of the totem pole. So it's rare to see Black ownership in the cannabis industry, and that needs to change, especially for the industry that we used to be so frowned upon or used against us.
Absolutely. Kindness, what's your take?
I mean, it's 100% became a civil rights issue for me when it threatened whether or not someone could come into my home and take my new child from me. At that point, it was about mothers. It was about Black mothers. It was about parents. It was about what is happening with this system called CPS and what is actually their job. It is 100% a civil rights issue from that perspective, from the perspective that Broderick is bringing up about access to this space. I see this as potential reparative process for people of color to get into a new industry. And those roadblocks are as high as they are for any other entry, the barriers. So yeah, it's the reason why I left the classroom and I use my voice anywhere I can to fight for this because of that.
Yep. Absolutely. One of our crew members, John D., he's checked in. He said, it's great for this man talking about you, Broderick, to improve his problem with cannabis. But what about the increasing number of men from 21 to 30 developing schizophrenia from heavy uses of cannabis later in their life? Dr. Bridget, can you speak to that?
So there's a lot of misunderstood information that's out there. And so this one little bit of research kind of keeps coming back and forth periodically. What we really do understand is that if you have a predisposition, genetically, it is within you that you have the likelihood of developing schizophrenia, and you have an abundance amount of cannabis use, particularly starting at a younger age, the likelihood that you're going to evolve into schizophrenia does increase, but you have to have the predisposition already. And for many, this happens, they usually develop it in their 20s, usually during stressful interactions or life events. And so we're not talking about people that would have never had schizophrenia. We're just usually, if you are already genetically predispositioned, it's about when are you going to develop it.
Right.
Okay. And so a lot of times the research is kind of going in a different direction where they're saying, if cannabis caused schizophrenia, there would be a lot more schizophrenia.
There would be a lot more schizophrenia.
Absolutely.
That's all. That's yeah.
I like how the whole panel is like, hell no, man. We will all there be schizophrenics everywhere. Okay, so kind of you're saying that there would be a lot more schizophrenia.
Yeah, there's, there are things to this as well. Like we are now breeding plants with high amounts of THC. The fact that here in the US, we can't actually do double-blind studies using the plant. So Dr. B's right. I mean, we know that you have to have a predisposition, but we've been using cannabis since the dawn of time, all people. So I think we would see, just my logic tells me that we would see a lot more people walking around having conversations with themselves if cannabis actually caused schizophrenia.
Correct. Let me.
That's why these conversations are important, because if we do not have these conversations, if we don't understand what responsible use is, if we don't nullify the myths, then we honestly are taking something that was always meant for us, that is a medication that can be helpful. It's incredible that it can be used for relaxation and medicinally equally without harm. That we are actually being programmed and brainwashed into not using something that is really, if you're someone that's into herbal medicine, this is herbal medicine.
And may I add something really quick? Because like Doc said, you definitely, like with any medicines, you gotta use with moderation. But the point is, cannabis is a medicine, and we got to educate ourselves more on that. And that's where we're getting away from even with this like rec or adult use. Like in my opinion, that's just another way of taxation. Like I think cannabis should be unlawful. It should be just like a legal plant or herb for everybody to access and learn and educate and heal themselves with. But we're the way it's getting categorized is almost getting treated just like a straight product when it's a medicine for people in all walks of life.
I mean, we use herbs in all.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Natasha.
I was going to say there are so many other herbs that are used as medicine, so it is rather bizarre. And I think a point that was made earlier was about the understanding the history of cannabis. One of the things that I helped do with some other attorneys was start the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers. And a big part of what we do is education not only for lawyers so that they can understand what it means to be a cannabis lawyer, and more importantly, so that they can learn to advocate in their state, particularly states that are emerging right now, but also to educate communities, to dispel a lot of these myths, to uncover the propaganda that led us to prohibition to begin with.
Yes, yes. And, you know, that's in fact what, when I left the classroom, that's what actually was born from that. I took my pedagogical skills, my experience in public education, and began writing curriculum for consumers, other mothers. And now, Club Kindness, we are completely focused on educating the workforce. Because much like Broderick said, you know, here we are selling this medicine that is healing people's bodies and communicating directly with the systems that we have. And our dispensary associates and bud tenders, as we call them, don't even understand what they're selling. And most importantly, the history of this plant. So 100%, that is, in fact, what we do over at Club Kindness for this reason.
You've got some competing forces here, right? You've got those that look at this as a profit center, and they have a very different agenda than those that understand both the culture, the community, the medicinal use, the religious use, the spiritual use. There are just different agendas. Those that are politicking just to politic, and those that understand what it is that we're trying to take out of a state of prohibition that it should never have been in.
No, that's a great point. I think that's an excellent point. I want to very quickly, Natasha, because you talked about the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers, NABCL, and I'm going to tell my guy, King Keenan, can we bring that up on the screen when you get a chance? NABCL.com is the website for this group of Black cannabis lawyers, what they do, who they are, and they have 3 components: learn, teach, and change. And that is, and, you know, folks, I would highly recommend, pardon the pun, highly, but I would highly recommend that if you are interested in learning more about what sisters like Natasha Andrews and others are doing in the legal space around this conversation around cannabis, that you take a look at nabcl.com and learn more information about what Black lawyers are doing, because there is so much stigma. To Broderick and to Kindness and to Natasha and Dr. Bridget, your points, there's so much stigma. And I know that if people don't think of alternatives, like it does not make sense for us to put drugs into our system, right? It does not, and I'm saying this for you, Doc, that we have this conversation a lot. It's just like we have to really figure out if what's going to work best for us, not just for our pockets, not just for our personal politics, but you're talking about health and wellness. And that's the part about this whole thing that I think there are a lot of Black folks in this country. We are so afraid, right? And even this having a conversation is like, oh my gosh, are you condoning it, Farajii? I know people be like, yo, you condoning it, but no, it's a part of our culture. Yeah. Like, we can't be afraid to have just simple conversations, because, you know, we trying to help people to understand, trying to get people to think through this whole process. And I think, Dr. Bridget, that's probably the hardest thing about this. Like, even when you hear the stories from Kindness and Broderick, you know, people are like, well, you know, it's still whatever stigma, whatever view, whatever myth that they hold on to, it's still a thing.
Yeah. But, you know, I will tell you at the end of the day, all research are individual stories that have been made into data.
Yes.
But I believe that the true power of understanding cannabis or nearly anything is actually in the stories themselves. And so by bringing these group of people together to have them share their story, I hope it opens up people's minds. Because the fact of the matter is, we have been incredibly brainwashed around what cannabis is. We've also manipulated a lot. So you have to understand what the plant was meant to be, what we've created, what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And so I'm hoping that Courage in Cannabis shows incredible people living their daily lives, making incredible choices. And then instead of being a part of the fear campaign, make an independent decision for yourself. And it might not be for you, but it might, maybe you'll understand your niece or your nephew or your child a little bit better that chooses to use this. Or maybe your young child one day might need this and you didn't even know it. And so the book is a collection of all sorts of stories, not just patients, but obviously we have, you know, our attorney, we have educators, we have corporate, we have growers that are doing caregiving in the state of Michigan, it's really every walk of life so that we understand it better and so that we can make more independent decisions for ourselves.
Absolutely. I want to go back to Natasha. Natasha, I know that there's a big conversation about legalizing cannabis across the country, removing some of the federal consequences off the records for those who engage in cannabis and everything. But I'm wondering, are there more regulations? Are there some more legal steps that are being put in place to make, like Doc said, the growers, to make it to be very natural, for lack of a better word, to get it to become more natural? Because I think the other element of the fear, especially for Black folks, is that, okay, if the government sanctioned this, and given our dysfunctional relationship with the United States government, that this is a plot and a plan to further destroy our community. But I'm wondering, what's the pushback that Black cannabis lawyers have to that point?
That's an excellent question. And first of all, I want to say I encourage more Black cannabis lawyers, or more Black attorneys for that matter, who are interested to really reach out, for the simple reason that that's part of the core mission that NABCL seeks to address. While we're all being distracted by what's happening at the state level, and I'm not saying that it's not important to be involved in the advocacy at your state level, there are things that are going into place preparing for federal level legislation that we're not keeping our eye on. And I think we're all familiar in Black communities of that whole distraction. Keep your eye on the prize at all times. So NABCL really does seek to keep our eye on what is happening, what are the conversations that are taking place. Because I'm sure it would be somewhat disheartening to know who some of the major players who are seeking to position themselves on a federal level to sort of dominate in this space. And so we often find ourselves sort of crying out, we do not want big tobacco to be the model. We do not want alcohol to be the model. Those are known toxins that are allowed to run rampant in our communities and throughout our country, known to cause harm with no medicinal value. And yet we are condemning a plant that we know has an abundance of medicinal value. So those are the types of conversations we need to be aware of. We need to understand what the Safe Banking Act is, because there's a lot of conversation about safe banking. As a matter of fact, I posted something this morning on LinkedIn about being cautious. Be cautiously aware of what's being presented to you. Because although there are some phenomenal things about safe banking, and I'm not here to try to disparage it in the last minute or so, keep in mind that there are a lot that seek to push through safe banking and to leave off social justice. That would be an absolute mistake, because that means that cannabis, which has an opportunity to be a game changer across the board and to normalize equity, would be utilized to just keep the status quo. And that's a very dangerous game to play.
Absolutely. Look, I cannot thank each and every one of you enough. And I cannot thank Dr. Bridget enough for bringing all of you onto the show to have this conversation. Kindness Ramirez, Broderick, Natasha Andrews, thank you. Dr. Bridget, what would you like to say as we close out the discussion?
You know, I just want people to, first of all, join me in the after chat so that we can dig in a little bit more and maybe really address some of your questions that are in the Culture Crew today. But if we don't do anything else, let's just keep an open mind, look at things differently, and understand the people that are in our community.
And of course, purchase the book.
I was going to say that, and buy the book. Don't forget to go buy the book.
Get the book, y'all. Carrots and Cannabis, Volume 2 is officially out. It is written by our sister, Dr. Bridget Cole Williams, MD. Folks, she's a family physician, cannabis expert, and a sister that's involved in the culture. Definitely check it out. Make sure you get your copy. Pick it up wherever books are sold, online, in stores. And most importantly, let's continue the conversation about being courageous and understanding the power of cannabis for the Black community. Thank each and every one of you for being on the show. And most importantly, thank you for being so good for the culture. We truly appreciate it.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
Go get Volume 1 too.
There we go. Roger said, get the one I'm in, and then you pick up the one that my sister's in. I get you. I hear you, Roger.
Yeah, get them both.
I appreciate y'all. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank our very special guest for coming on. I want to thank you, crew, for being a part of the conversation. Hopefully you got some new understanding. You learned something different from that discussion. So I truly appreciate y'all. And of course, I want to thank my fantastic production team, Maddie, and my man, King Keenan, for making the show happen today. Folks, make sure you do your due diligence. Support us here at Black Star Network. You see the type of conversations we're having. You see how important they are, how relevant they are, how culturally informed they are. Make sure you go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Give something to help to support us financially, but also download the app for free. And of course, share the content when we go live in various spaces on social media and in other spaces. But again, support blackstarnetwork.com. And also make sure that you let your friends and family know we are streaming live on Amazon News, on Roku TV. So we're streaming live there on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just tell your Amazon Fire TV, Alexa, play news from Black Star Network, and boom, you got the hottest digital platform coming up there right there on your screen. That's going to do it for us. I look forward to reconnecting with each and every one of you tomorrow. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.